Well, hello, this is Dr. Chris Lamont, and this is my February chat. If you recall, I'm going to do a chat each month, so I'm going to become more of a nuisance. Uh, Kind of follows along with my blogs this year. I'm doing this because things have got a little turbulent out there, maybe you've noticed. Uh, and So I figured all the help we can throw into this as far as pulling together ideas would be probably a good idea, a good commitment for the year of 2021, right? Uh, so real quick review, that's kind of what I'm all about. The blogs are there. I'm most certainly available for your comments and questions and ideas. So Chris at wizardscatch.com will get you into my email address, and it's wizardscatch, WIZARDSCACHE. If you're looking at this, you're also on Wizards Catch channel. I will probably bug people for the first 3 months and then not after that, because I hate being bugged, and most of you do too. So subscribe to this. It doesn't cost you anything. I don't make any money on it, but it does get you a notice from them, which saves me the work of sending out notices and bugging you. Let them bug you. And then you can always cancel, and it would hurt my feelings, but I don't think you can hurt my feelings anyhow. So anyway, that's the gist of it. What are we talking about here? It is very normal for humans to come with a concept in life and then notice it changes. It just grows up. It's just a maturing process, we used to call it. We used to call it a lot of things. It's still in effect. Now it's a big, some people make a big psychodrama out of it. It's like, oh my, I was one of the chosen ones or something like that. I don't know. And it doesn't matter. It just happens. So you can implement all that happening. You can influence it. The theme this year is what influences. So you can influence that. So we're working in that direction. How can we influence our own personal growth? And I've done that kind of work for years. But now something different's happening. Let me give you an example. You ever cross a creek? If you find an area in a creek where there's some rocks and you kind of step on the rocks and you go across. Well, I've crossed a lot of creeks in my life, metaphorically as well as physically. And I can remember creeks that were really solid. I had run across them all the time, as a kid playing and as an adult playing. And every now and then I cross a creek, which I have crossed before. And now all of a sudden this year, a couple of rocks are a little wiggly. Like, whoa, they've always been real secure in the past. They're a little wiggly now. That's what we humans do. The background here is somebody's kind of cool looking library. I like that. Okay, very classy. Give me a little glass maybe. Okay, nonetheless, the background changes, which is why I'm changing this. You get this? The background changes. So the background changes, and when the background changes, we're used to securing into it. Somebody was willing to say, this is my library. I'm sure it's somebody's. So this is my library. Okay. It's not really very secure because I just press a button and it changes. Right now, we're in a state where the background is changing. Think climate change, and it's more than climate, right? There's financial change. There's all kinds of crazy changes going on. There's a lot of health changes going on. Maybe you noticed, right? So all this change is occurring because those rocks are starting to move. We need to figure out what we can do to get through this in one piece, right? Normal growth for the background changes slowly. It is an entropy, it wears, right? But then all of a sudden, every few hundred years, every 1,000 years or so, the whole thing just falls apart. You can look at our history. There are tons of books on this. There's tons of research on this. It just happens, and we're in the middle of it. So what are we going to do? Well, I think the first thing we have to start to look at, from my ramping, raving all of last year in 2021 about two systems, not a new idea, but most certainly I'm just framing it out because I had to find some way to take this apart a little more so that we can talk about the moving parts, so we'd have something a little better to secure into, because those rocks now are moving and they used to be solid, okay? So I said in the phenomena system, or the piece that we call creation, right, is that there's balance, which is the criterion for it. Everything has to be, all potential would have to be all in a state of balance. Otherwise, there would be a bias and the whole thing would just entropy and collapse, right? So it has to be in a state of balance. It has to have a range that would be infinite, right? Because otherwise it would be a bias. If it made a choice, it'd be a bias. Uh, and to make that a drama for us to come into form, we had to divide that into pieces, right? So each piece has an all potential for its piece. Those pieces, then the wholeness of that is called relationship. That just is there. You don't have to do anything. You woke up this morning, you looked in the mirror, and there you were, just like yesterday. Maybe a little older, but it probably wouldn't show up. Not in a day, but anyway, that part is not a problem. Sometimes we forget that and we get lost in the other part of it, but we have to bridge back and forth. But that's not an issue. It's there. It's secure. But we can't secure in our logical world into phenomena because our logical world has this quasi-religious idea that it has to be explainable. It has to be a story that works. It has to be a truth. And that's all BS, right? Because we've all experienced phenomena in life that haven't panned out to be true, but we saw something happen. We don't have enough. Come on, there's tons of books on that too. Tons of stuff, right? Just happens. It's like, whoa, I don't know why it happened. I could probably figure out why those rocks came loose because it's in a river, water's flowing. Okay, I got it. The mud maybe shifted or who knows what, a tree washed down the river. I can make up a story about that, but it doesn't make it true because I wasn't there when it happened. I don't know for sure it happened. And if we had 5 people witness it, we would probably have 5 different stories. That's the cool thing about being a human on this planet. There never was a truth, right? It's just an experience, a lot of assumptions. We're trying to get the experience a little more congruent to where, who and what we are in form. When we get too far adrift from that, it seems to show up in ill health. That's my story, okay? If you got a better one, cool, that's fine. But that's my story. All right, so let's look at the logical piece. There are a lot of other gateways or bridges. I call them bridges now. I used to call them gateways. I've been teaching this stuff so long, I've just changed the names so I get tired of repeating myself. And you guys get tired of hearing it one way. So all of a sudden it sounds new to you, but it's really the same thing. In this logical system that we live in, this world of form, it's all logical pieces. It's all solid. It's all stuff. There's no empty space. Energy by itself is not real stable. It's blinking in and out all the time, but a real fast blink rate. Your computer monitor, if you're watching this talk, is blinking right now, but you don't notice it because that rate is adjustable, so you don't see the blink. If you see any bobbing around, it's probably my head bobbing because, come on, I'm old. All right. Or the background might be bobbing if I move too fast. But the screen's also blinking. So pretty much energetically speaking, we're all blinking kind of at a fast rate. It's all pretty much flows into a background like we have in there. There are books, there are pictures, there are lights, there's a couch over here on my side. Okay, kind of cool. All right, so those are all logical pieces that we interact with in the world, that we look for influence. Remember, we're looking at influence, and what we look at to create influence, of course, is decisions. But we have 2 ways of making decisions. One is a decision where we look at all the variables and weigh them all out and make an intelligent decision based on information that's current right now in the logical system. Or we make a totally unconscious decision automatically. We don't think about it at all. It's totally based on familiar. If there's 6 options and 2 are familiar to you, you're going to a restaurant and there's a hamburger on there and there's a Caesar salad for chicken, and that's familiar. And all the rest might be in a foreign language or food you don't like or food you don't eat. So really, you narrow it down to an A-B comparison. You narrow it down to 2 things, and you think you're making a decision. And you don't. I went with some friends to a restaurant one time in Carmel, and I went by and they had a big sign out front. They had a special on rabbit. So I thought, wow, French restaurant, special on rabbit, let's go there. Well, I went in and they didn't have the rabbit. They were out. So I picked something else on the menu and they didn't have that either. I picked several things on the menu. Finally, I just told the waiter, okay, I don't care. Whatever you have back in the kitchen, do your best job, make something up and bring it to me. I just eat it. Uh, yeah, it just seems to me very odd to have a sign out by the street advertising rabbit and you get in there and they don't have it. Anyway, that's just life, right? So decision making is one tool, but we don't do that very well. We don't embrace change very well. Automatic system overrides most all the time. Or we knock it down to A, B, and we think we're deciding by two familiar pieces, and really it's already made a decision anyhow. Okay, because both are equal. So with two decisions, if there's any gain, if you gain something over here, you lost it over here. If you lost something over here, you get there's no gain. At 3 or 4, there might be a gain, but with 2, it's no gain. So that's why it allows you to decide. You can't hurt yourself. You don't get anything, you don't lose anything. A, B are horrible decision-making tools. Okay, the next thing that we can play with is questions. We should ask more questions. Right now, for the most part, I've been teaching for, I don't know, 50 years. I talk and talk and talk, and then I say, any questions? Very rare do I get questions. I do these webinars, and very rare do I get questions. You guys don't ask questions. I put out all kinds of crazy ideas, and nobody asks questions. I got a handful of people that ask questions because they're trying to decide whether it's worth their time looking at me. I have people that send me links to things that are so outrageous. Nobody asked the question. Somebody just made something up and they're all believing it, right? We had a thing in the news right here in Vancouver, Washington. Some lady's taking her mother into the hospital. I don't know if you recognize it in your state or not, but in our state, only people that are sick can go to the hospital. No one else can go with them because of COVID restrictions. I don't care what kind of, unless a person is crippled or they need an aid, right? That's it. So she takes her mother who can walk and walks in, and they won't let her in. She gets on her phone and gets around 20 people down there. And finally, they had to get the sheriff's department. They had to mace people. They had to spray people. They had to do this lockdown. Her video says, they've got my mother as captive in there and they won't release her. The sheriff's department went in and talked to the mother. They said, would you like to leave? And the mother said, no, I don't want any part of those crazy people out there. I want to stay right here. I'm not feeling good. I came to the hospital. They just gave me a ride. I don't want any part of them. So they had to haul those people away and arrest them. They had to lock the hospital down. Just, isn't it silly what we get into? Come on, you guys. Number one, there wasn't very good decision making. Number two, someone didn't ask intelligent questions at all. They just created a riot. And 20 or 30 people showed up because of a phone call, or she finally got onto Zoom because everything else shut her down. Texting shut down, everything shut down because they recognized. And I'm sure Zoom shut down, but it takes them a few minutes longer to edit that whole content. So here she was pretending to have an emergency and looking for help. There was none of that existing. Just amazing. Okay, so what do we have? What are we really good at for a short period of time? Attention. We're really good at attention. She was actually paying attention, not asking good questions, making bad decisions. But she recognized, she found the hospital. That was a feat of attention. And she got to the front door. She just didn't see the sign that says nobody's allowed in unless the patient. So her attention scanned really quick. And then for the next hour and a half, they had a riot because of her poor attention. But most certainly she had it. Normally we think of that as preference. I picked February because it's Valentine's Day. So I have a preference. I'm married. It's my preference, right? So I have to remember every year that I married this lady. So I better be nice to her at least one day a year. I've been researching a place to take her to dinner or do something, which is very, very difficult in this COVID world. It's just interesting. It's really hard to celebrate life, right? When life is being threatened, but life has always been threatened. Whatever. But we have this equality of attention. We can get maybe a couple of minutes in attention. We start to scan out. It doesn't take very long. It's taken me a lot of practice to sit down and read for 2-3 hours, but I can pretty much, in my library, I can pretty much just tone out everything, especially since the library is a fantasy. Oh, I do have a library, but it's not at my garage where my computer is. So anyway, all right. So attention we can actually work with. We can then attend to things. We can then start to pay more attention. We can notice things like signs. We can notice things like conditions that are dangerous or not dangerous. We can notice things that are taxing us, like, wow, I need to get a drink of water, or I need to take a break, or I need to pay attention, or wow, uh, I just gained 4 pounds. What did I do? Right? I weigh myself every day because I'm looking at, hey, all us old people are supposed to have clogged up colons and be diabetic. And I don't want to be one of the statistics. So I pay attention, right? Uh, every day I pay attention because I put it into a habit of being, right? It helps us having a list of things we need to attend to, right? Uh, right now it's February, so I start to wash the walls in the house. I have done the second bathroom this week and washed all the walls, scrubbed everything down, cleaned up everything, cleaned the floors, got it all squared away. My wife cleans it on a regular basis, but I come through once a year and go through everything, right? And now I'm working in the laundry room. So I pulled the dryer out, cleaned all the lint tracks, cleaned all the things from the roof. I'll be washing walls later on today. So those are just my attention systematically going through the process of what we need to do to live on this planet, to pay attention to those things, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? So I build them into the habit of life. I put them into routines. I make myself notes and lists so that I've got down what needs my attention so that I don't get distracted. I don't sit down and read a book for 2 hours and not get something done. I then can read the book for 2 hours, but I won't get lost in the story somewhere and not get the things that need my attention. What needs my attention is so vast, I divide it up and I make it into a systematic process. That's all part of what we do in a logical system. Do you get this? That's why it's called a logical system. It's all logical steps. It's all logical pieces. And that's why it works if you do it that way. If you do it other way and just kind of go with the wind, why it's like, wow, there's a lot of things that don't get done. All right. I have a lot of people that call me that, don't get life done. They just, well, I didn't do that. I've been meaning to do that. I didn't do that. Well, yeah, you're right. I should have done that. That's what I get. I just like, wow, we paid attention to it. At some point in time, you probably paid me money to get that piece of information. You started attending to it and made a difference in your life, and then you lost your attention to it. And you got segued into it because you didn't change that habit pattern. Now that's personal growth. We're dealing with complications now because the background's changing. So whatever you secured into in your defense, whatever you secured into may have gone away, may have gone somewhere, right? I put in a new fence last summer. I'm looking over and it's secured into my neighbor's fence. We just did a double back fence. And so I see one of my neighbor's posts are going. So I'm going to have to tear my fence apart this summer, tear their fence apart this summer and put a new post in the center. It's not a big thing. It's just 16 feet of fencing I got to take off to put the new post in and put 16 feet of fencing back on. Those are all things that I notice, I'm paying attention, it's getting loose, it's not going to fall over. But come spring, when it's not raining, somewhere probably in July or August, I'll get out there with a hat on and tear that fence apart and put a new post in, right? It's not the post, that's probably $10, but it's most certainly a bag of cement, maybe 5. It's not the expense involved, it's just a couple of days of labor involved and then reassembling it all again. You see, this is how we manage life. Do you follow what I'm saying? I don't know if that's how you manage life. That's how I manage life. People are always saying, well, Chris, what do you do? Well, I'm just telling you, that's what I do, right? I look around, I see what needs to be done, and some of it can be put off for a few more years. And some of it needs to be addressed sometime this year. And some of it needs to be addressed immediately, right? So it's like, wow, yeah. Most of the things we do out of habit, I brush my teeth, I take a shower, right? Those are habit pieces. I put on a clean shirt for the stock. That's a habit I have, right? I I got about 5 or 6 suits because I used to wear a suit and a tie for my talks. And YouTube video allows me to be a little more informal, right? Why do I wear a suit and a tie? Because I've read all those books that says if you stand up there dressed up a little more, you demand more attention from people. It's a symbol of some type of authority. Why do you think all those people in business run around in suits? Because it's comfortable, because they love them, because they like putting that tie on? No, because it looks like they have some type of authority, right? Like a white coat for a doctor. Come on. We all pay attention to this stuff. We realize it's all there to catch our subconscious because of the habits that we've lived in, right? Those come from habits. There's not marked somewhere as a truth. It was the habit. People that wore suits were people that could afford to buy a suit. So all of a sudden they had authority. Later on, more people could buy suits, but all of a sudden the ones with the authority were always wearing suits. Do you understand it becomes a habit pattern? Okay. So it becomes an unconscious habit pattern. I'm advocating that you look around and you make yourself lists of things that you notice, and then you schedule into it so that you are now influencing your habit pattern rather than it automatically running for you. So now you just gained a new exercise. That's called thinking, right? And you can start to make those assignments. It doesn't have to be hard work, right? So that's our goal. What are your preferences? Now's a good time of year, we're all locked down, to start looking at what your preferences are. Are you drinking too much? Right now we find what? And drinking too much is up. Abusing children and abusing spouse is up because we're all locked in. So what does that tell you? Where's our attention been? What if you're locked down? What are you doing? Home Depot is really busy because a lot of people are doing projects, but I was there this morning and there wasn't very many people there. So it's like they're doing projects, but they're getting there around noon or 1 in the afternoon to start their projects because it's rainy. So there's not a lot of outdoor projects. It's probably more indoor projects, probably fixing that broken chair leg or painting a wall or repairing a hole in the wall, or because they were mad or threw a beer bottle through it, whatever, right? It's smaller pieces and more spontaneity. We really need to be able, because we can't secure in that background, I'm advocating that we make preferences. Something broken, something needs to be fixed, something you've been wanting to do for a while. We make preferences and we secure into those preferences that we make, and we put it together in some type of a list, in some type of a structure, because it's all structured. Don't depend on this thing to make it for you, right? Because it doesn't, it works amazing, but it has some short-sightedness. You can get really lost in automatic programs, right? Come on, you guys have tried sending texts and you find it automatically corrects your spelling and it gives you words that you certainly didn't want to use. I don't have to deal with that because I just turned texting off. My way of dealing with automatic programs and automatic communications that fail 60% of the time is to not do them. That's just a decision I make. So I don't text. Does it have value to some people? I think so, but I don't know. I had an appointment to get my eyes checked. I'll have new glasses pretty soon. Just the nature of the beast, right? We start getting older, things start to get a little weaker, maybe. Although I've had this prescription for 5 years, but anyway, I had an eye appointment. It's like I have texting turned off, so I don't have to deal with the 5 or 6 or 7 texts that you get to remind you that you've got an eye appointment. I actually have an eye appointment written down on my schedule, right? So I actually showed up, and then it gives me a little review, and it said, was their automatic program of sending you an email and all these reminders successful, or were they beneficial? I said, no, absolutely not. And I have, going on my way, my dentist, I told them that if they ever send me an email or a reminder or a text, I will cancel my appointment and never come back. I've gone out of my way to find a dentist. My criterion for a dentist is one that can turn off that automatic program. I'm sorry, I want to run my own program. I want to be more selecting what I attend to, because I can prioritize what I can tend to. I can decide to do something and do it. And I think that would be very beneficial when a changing world and the background changes. But then I think you have to be able to make those choices. You really have to pay a lot more attention. All right. So I'm just throwing an idea. These are going to be relatively short. I should hope so. We can secure those things. You need a story. When I was a Boy Scout, there was a place in the mountains. There was a creek that the boys used to go camping in. It's a park, state park or federal park. I don't remember, but it was somewhere. And it had a waterfall. The creek went down, had a waterfall, and it went down maybe 40 feet. And there was a big pool of water at the bottom. So relatively, if you fell, it probably maybe wouldn't kill you. You might have a chance, right? And at the top, about back 10 feet from the edge, or where the water flew off the edge of the creek, there was a log laid across. And Boy Scouts have been going across that log for years to get one side or the other. It's just, yeah. And the first year I went across it, they tell you, whoever's there, they say, okay, when you cross this log, when you get halfway across, it's going to wiggle a little bit. It's going to shift. So be really careful, because it's going to happen. So just kind of catch yourself and then keep going. You won't fall. Nobody's ever fallen. I went across and I could feel that wiggle. That's a second of panic, but I got across. Not a problem. I want to do that. And then the next year I went up there. I was a year older and I already knew what was coming. So I'm looking at the log and I'm saying, wow, why does this wiggle? And I'm looking where it's sitting in the dirt. And I see that the thick part, the root part on this side, actually wiggles a little bit. And so I pushed it and I found a rock and I shoved a rock in there. And then when we went to cross it, we got all the way across and it didn't wiggle anymore. And the next year I went up, it was just so funny because here the kids, the older kids, are telling the younger kids for their first time, now when you cross the log, it'll wiggle. And I had to kind of laugh to myself and I didn't say anything, but I had fixed the wiggle and it doesn't wiggle anymore. But they were still teaching that. They didn't attend to it. They didn't notice that it doesn't wiggle. They didn't notice it was gone. I never told anybody I fixed it, but it was gone. I don't know why someone else didn't fix it sooner. It was not that complicated. And it might start to wiggle someday again as it's dirt. It may move. It may do all the, probably by now that was, I don't know, 60 years ago. By now, probably the logs were rotten and gone. And it probably built a cement bridge across. I have no idea. That's the element of participating in life, looking around for solutions in this logical format we have, find some logical solution, make things work, engage with what's going on. We're starting with attention. I don't want to get too hard or too far ahead of myself. We're starting with just attention. Start to notice. Get yourself a piece of paper. Write down the things you notice around. Don't just put them in your head and say, well, I'll come back to that later. Write a note, right? I'm going book shopping and I'm going to buy 5 or 6 books that I'll put in my library to read. So I've got to write them down on a schedule because right now I'm reading 3 books. And when I get those done, so I have to look at books that aren't relevant to what's going on right now. I'm actually buying books that's relative to something that'll be going on 3 or 4 or 5 months from now. So when I pick the book up, which I've had on my shelf now for those months, and open it up, I go, wow, that's just right on. It's just amazing. It's amazing not because I got lucky. It's not amazing because I'm a genius. It got amazing because I was looking for influences, prioritizing them for the right future time. You see, isn't that kind of interesting? So I'm paying attention 3 months from now also. Yeah, we can expand these tools out a little more. With a changing background, it's probably a good idea to find something else to secure into. You start to get the drift of what I'm saying about? All right, I've talked enough. Thank you very much. I think it was, for many Parmenides, yes, that said, the first principle is being is. So I said, you don't have to worry about that part. And then he said, the second principle is not being is not. So you can't just be in a logical system. You have to participate in this system. It's a little risky, right? So you really have to engage. We're starting with attention. So go forth, pay attention, and I'll talk to you. I will talk to you March, and we'll see what we can do then. Okay? Thanks a lot.